Welcome to the Compass Audiocast. I'm your host, Hawa Kambian. Prepare to revisit the compassionate wisdom many of us heard in our youth so that we can mindfully apply it to reimagine a future of work that we can all shape for the better. So welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Compass Audiocast. Our quote for today is, "Rules are made for a reason, to protect and keep me safe." So when I was a child and I would read this quote, it would make me think about the importance of falling in line, listening to authority because they have my best interest at heart, right? Whether a parent, a teacher, a family friend, a relative, authority looks quite similar from that vantage point when you're a child, at least in my case. And when I started working, I started to adopt more of a mindset around how do my workplace rules have my best interest at heart, and how am I giving and receiving that energy? We can talk about the documented versus cultural rules. We can talk about technical versus interpersonal rules. This is a juicy topic and there's a lot here. So the experience that this conjures up for me in my work life is about a time when I was gifted a new role and a new team, and it put me right in that messy middle of management where I have people to answer to and where people are also answering to me. So I was taking on a new role with elevated responsibility and sparkle and leading a team that was in person and remote. So what was the problem here? Because it sounds pretty good on the surface. My challenge was that it was too much, too fast, too soon. Have you ever heard that in sports or fitness? Injury can usually be attributed to someone doing something too much, too fast, or too soon. And I find that applicable to so many other areas of life. And so while this career opportunity checked off all the milestone boxes intellectually, it was a completely different experience physically and emotionally. And so diving in deeper to that, when I reflect now, the difficulty therein was because I had two masters to serve, the ones who put me there and the ones who depend on me. And I know this is a reality that thousands of people are experiencing out there in their work life. Professionally, I want to be this competent and trusted person who can say yes and deliver and build a team. And all of that takes intention, energy, and support to be sustainable, right? The goal is I want to be able to live to see another day being compassionate, curious, and adaptable enough to keep doing the work and not just be a flash in a pan that disappears because I'm working in a way that doesn't allow me to keep giving that type of energy. So the negative state when I was having this experience, and it all happened very quickly, of, being promoted, moving into a new way of working, having new goals to focus on, having a new team to navigate with, I was stretched thin to the max. There was an understanding that having increased responsibility meant a longer to-do list and more autonomy, as well as the reality that there was limited information and support to do any of that. While at the same time, trying to be mindful of how to align and support and train my team to tackle the to-do list in a way that was effective and efficient, while also minimizing unnecessary stress of an administrative job, not a humanitarian, acute, life-saving job. What I really wanted to feel was like I had the tools and the support to be a connector in the organization, to be able to use my vantage point, my expertise, and my discernment to drive a higher level strategy, plus having the clarity of purpose for my team so that we could align on, divide, and conquer execution. In a word, I was looking for balance. And so why is balance so important to the work experience development of not just myself, but many who are listening out there? And really, in my opinion, it's because that messy middle of management has a bad reputation that is only getting worse for those on the inside and those on the outside. An entrepreneur.com article from the US last year published insights that young workers, especially in tech, want nothing to do with becoming managers, largely due to an imbalance that comes from a lack of trust in leadership based on unrealistic pressure that these roles demand. People are also seeing through the extra cash and fancy titles to appreciate that the reality isn't always worth the literal payoff. Pressure and demands are not in and of themselves negative experiences. However, the bottom line is that people need support to successfully navigate pressure and demands. Managers exist because we can acknowledge that the employees that they work with need support. So why can't we acknowledge that for managers too? Ultimately, the attraction, engagement, and retention of the workforce is going to weigh heavily on better correcting for these kinds of imbalances if productivity, revenue, sustainability are still priorities for companies. So what do I do today when I find myself in a too much, too fast, too soon environment or workplace culture? So one of the first things I like to do is get more information on the official rules. In most orgs, we tend to ride on so much of the informal culture and ways of doing things that unless you're in a human resources, admin, or people function, we probably don't even know what's official in terms of the well-being support that the company has committed to. So I like to find out, get informed, and use it for my well-being. Next, set them boundaries. I could write a book on this. Stay tuned. And there are so many ways to set boundaries in the workplace. Physically, emotionally, energetically, mentally. I like to be intentional with myself about what makes me feel exhausted, unprotected, and unsafe. If it's part of my actual job, then I can have a conversation with my supervisor. And if it isn't part of my job, then I can start practicing saying, no, thank you. It's not about an attack. It's about a focus on what kind of conditions, dynamics, and interactions will allow my partnership with supervisors and supervisees to continue in a healthy way. Finally, and this one's big, hold to account. I make my very best effort to speak with leaders and teams about the support I need or to discuss work boundaries that are important to me. Again, I watch how these conversations go or don't to learn a lot about people's readiness to understand or align with me and to listen for what their needs are as well. It's not to say that everything I'm uncomfortable with warrants an organizational response. However, it at least deserves an open mind and some consideration. That's culture, after all, adapting to the changing needs of a group of people. And if we're not open to listening and making incremental changes that will be significant, how is that supposed to happen organically and collectively? Also, when I have a team, I like to create that space for them too. It doesn't have to be every day or even every week, but it's important to signal as part of my brand of leadership the ability to have intentional conversations where I'm willing to put in effort to address challenges because I'm looking for the same, right, from my supervisors and my colleagues. So in this way, I can continue to build trust, retain my team, and truly be a culture builder. So the life change that I've experienced from practicing more of these habits is that it's helped me flip my thinking, where I tend to be someone who is hyper aware of the rules and scared to make a mistake or fall out of line. And now, instead of channeling that so much inward to doubt or judge myself, I realize that the balance is important too, so that I can be aware and curious about whether the people I'm collaborating with are also aligning to what was agreed to. We're human, we live in a very dynamic time, and we actually need the support and compassion from one another to identify when we need help and when there's room for us to do more and be better in the help we offer. It's an act of vulnerability to request help outright, and in any kind of relationship to talk about needs. And I welcome that, I celebrate that, I embody that. That messy middle of management can be a two-way street, and showing up doesn't necessarily guarantee that you'll be able to move forward together with people. At the very least, I know that I've done the work and set the example that it's important for the younger, emerging generation to be able to have these kinds of conversations with leaders. And even if leaders don't agree, it's important to me to be a professional who understands my role, the journey, and the support required to get where I'm trying to go. That to me is what integrity looks like, doing the hard, honest, and authentic thing, especially when it's inconvenient, and hoping that my truth is respected, even if my method. Thanks for tuning into the Compass Audiocast, where we bridge past, present, and positive for the future of work. Please like this post if you found it useful, share it with someone who may need to hear it, and subscribe if you want to be notified when our next one comes out. Leave me a comment to share a time when rules and accountability have helped or hindered your career or business, and how you've taken that lesson forward. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next.